welcome to our channel Xaphal. My name is Panisha Puri, and today we have with us Dr. Aparaajita Pandey, who is working as an assistant professor at Amity. Before we address questions from the students, I would like you to tell our viewers a little bit about what you are currently doing.
First of all, thank you for having me. And I'm Dr. Aparaajita Pandey. Right now, I'm an assistant professor in the Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies. And what I teach is defense and strategic studies to students who are interested in geopolitics and strategy. I have also taught public policy and public administration in the same university in the department. It's called the Amity Institute of Public Policy. So I'm well versed with both of these subjects. I have a master's in international relations, and then I went on to do my MPhil and PhD in energy statecraft, which basically means how is it that countries use their energy resources to further their foreign policy. And that is where I came into touch with public policy, with foreign policy decision making, all of that. And since once I was finished with my PhD, Amity called me, I joined, and since then I've been teaching. I've dabbled in a few other things, but mostly been a professor since then.
So, what inspired you to be a professor? You wanted to be a professor, or is there any inspiration behind?
So, I do come from a long line of people in this profession. My mother's been a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher. And so I always respected that profession. I was also, the fact is that when you do a PhD, and you do a PhD in such a niche subject, I felt like it was my duty to give back to the students, as if because I've learned so much from some brilliant professors who taught me not just what the subject was, but how to think, how to study, how to analyze, how to assess situations. And then it became my responsibility to do the same for other people who are interested, for other students who were interested. And I'm a product of Jawaharlal Nehru University. So I had some brilliant professors who taught me things. And I had great opportunities where I went to these countries. I met with those people. I studied and I also taught in those universities. So I thought I must do that in my country also. And Amity was a wonderful opportunity that came across, and I thought that this is my best career option right now. So that is what I did.
So, as a professor, what are your day-to-day responsibilities are like?
Okay, so first and foremost is the teaching. I take a BA. I teach undergraduate students. I teach postgraduate students, and I have about 4 PhD students, scholars rather, who are registered under me. So when it comes to the BA and the MA, you have to make a lesson plan. You have to be so syllabus is obviously decided initially before the session even starts, and then according to the syllabus, according to the classes, the students are sent study material. And since it's an undergraduate and a postgraduate program, it is very different from a school type situation. So the students are expected to come well versed with the study material, and then the class happens. You have a discussion on the study material. You have you point, you clear out doubts. You talk about things that have that confuse students a little. And in the same class, I encourage my students to speak up if they if they have an opinion that is very different from mine, which I completely encourage. I feel like that is the best part. That is where academic discussion and academic research lie. I try and keep my assignments very research based, because these are subjects that need research, that need you to study, that need you to read a lot more than what you think is asked of you. Except for this, there is a fair amount of administrative duties also in a university. It is not just teaching, it is not just being up to date with your information. We also have to spend hours in the library. We have to do faculty development programs, so that we are constantly updated with the knowledge. At the same time, there's a bunch of administrative duties. You have to make sure that the documents are upright, that we are in sync with the new education policy. So we have our day, which is a 8.5 hour day work day, but except for that 8.5 hours spent at the university, then you spend about 3 or 4 hours at least preparing for the day ahead.
Right.
So it's quite easily a 12-hour work day, and that is what is expected of you.
Okay. Apart from teaching, what are these administrative duties? Would you like to elaborate on that?
Okay, administrative duties usually include, because Amity is a university like that, it is a very student centric university. So my duties include being a student coordinator. So always being in touch with the students, understanding what their problems might be, because students do come from different places. Some of them have traveled all the way from Tamil Nadu or Tripura, and I have to make sure that they're comfortable, they're not facing any problems. So they do come to me. We also have something called a mentor-mentee session, which happens every Thursday of the week, which I think is a brilliant session, where all the faculties have about 10 to 12 students, and they have very specific sort of discussions with these students. We will choose a theme for every session, and it could be understanding how to do a literature review, it could be a career counseling session, it could be a discussion on something that has happened recently in the world, it could be anything that is related to their academics but also related to their personality development. So I become their mentor, they are my mentees. It is also my duty to then connect them to industry mentors. I have to make sure that there are guest lectures where I call experts and say I'm teaching a course on, say, the Chinese foreign policy. So I will call somebody who is an expert on China and who is an expert on the foreign policy of China, and they will give a guest lecture.
Okay.
So all of this plus the administrative duties that the university will give you, making documents, making reports, making sure your question papers are uploaded and checked in time and result gets out on time. So the smooth running of a university is not just based on the classroom teaching, it is also based on logistics, and that is true for every profession. So the logistics part does make up a significant amount of your workday. Other than all of this, the teachers, as an academician, you also have to continuously publish. So we try and publish a lot of academic papers as much as we can. That takes up quite a while, because to write a 5,000 word paper, you need around a month and a half to do the research, to get through the to get to the writing, and to get to the improvements in the paper. So all of that is included in being a professor.
Chat GPT helpful?
I have not used ChatGPT.
Okay.
I have heard from people that it is helpful. However, the academician in me will always feel like that is cheating. So I don't like that a lot. Also, I feel like ChatGPT is only working because people like me are writing. It does pick up paragraphs or ideas or perceptions from things that have already been written.
Right.
Also, it's not free of plagiarism. We don't encourage plagiarism at all. We have a very strict no plagiarism policy.
Okay.
So if you give me a chat GPT written essay, I put it through the software, it comes out as 75% plagiarized. That is where you're disqualified in your assignment.
Okay.
So my students know that chat GPT is not going to be, no copy paste business is allowed.
Right.
So
But we can take help from that and create our own document.
I feel like it is not something AI in its entirety is not something that we can avoid. It is going to become more and more developed. It is going to become more and more sneaky. So it is better to understand how it is working, and then continuously gain from that, continuously update your skills so that you can take help from it and make it work for you, instead of you being replaced by the chat GPT, by the AI. So yes, I'm sure there are people who are writing papers with chat GPT, but I don't do that.
So, how you collaborate with different faculty to call them as a guest faculty? How you collaborate? What are your sources?
So, thankfully, academia in itself is a very small community. And because I come from the background of international relations, and then you make it even more niche when you choose your different streams, you tend to know a lot of people. You tend to have friends. If I have my core area when I was doing my MPhil and PhD was Latin America and Caribbean. Similarly, my friend's core area or somebody I know whose core area could be, say, Russia or someplace in Africa or Far East. So then, it's your friendship. It's you call your friends and they call you. Uh, the other is when I'm doing my research, I will come across new people or new authors who are researching on similar subjects and who have done incredibly well, who have written great papers, and then I'll connect with them through a site like LinkedIn or message them or see which university they're from and connect with their, say, HOD and say I want a person like that. Similarly, I have to call an industry professional, maybe like a bureaucrat who has immense knowledge of how diplomacy works on the field. So
Right.
I will write to them. If I have any personal connection, I would ask them. And if they're available, they come for the guest lecture. They are also given an honorarium. Sometimes we will make our friends work without an honorarium, but they do the same to us. So those things work, but mostly it is kept very professional. And you call people who have proven themselves over and over again, and it is always for the benefit of the students. So that is how we get to it.
Is there any other sources you use to network?
We are always going to conferences also.
Okay.
There's actually like a G20 summit that is coming up in Jammu, which is happening from in the Jammu University, which is happening from the 18th to the 20th. I'll be going for that. So meeting people in these places, say you're going to think tanks, they are calling you as an expert. Or I started my career from a think tank. My first job was a research intern in Indian Council of World Affairs, which is a think tank. It's a foreign policy think tank for the Ministry of External Affairs. So I learned a lot from all of these senior researchers who were there. So that is also one place where you do a lot of networking. So conferences, summits, seminars, where you are called or you go as a participant. These are brilliant places to network. These are brilliant places to learn. And if I've written a book with someone, say somebody has taken out a book and they have invited you to write a chapter, so though, or you have collaborated on some other kind of publication, so those things help a lot.
So, is your job required you to travel a lot or on a regular basis?
Not this current job. I do not. I'm not required to travel a lot. I do travel on my own when I'm required to be at a conference in another university. So I'm also a faculty in the Latin America department, a visiting faculty in the Latin America department of Kerala University. So
Okay.
when they want me to have, they want me there to teach a class sometimes. So they'll call me. Of course, they facilitate the travel, etc. So I'll be there. This Jammu University thing is very recent, so I'm giving you that example. When I was doing my PhD, at that point of time, I was fortunate enough to go for a field research to the countries of Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname. So that travel and all was also facilitated by them. Conferences for young scholars, those people who want to travel the world. Conferences are a great way to travel because they usually facilitate your travel and your stay, or at least your travel. So you should write a lot of papers, you should get selected in these conferences, and then you get travel grants. You travel to those countries, you enhance your knowledge. And if you're traveling all the way to, say, Argentina, you are going to stay a week there, do some tourism. So that also happens. Yes.
So it requires you to, travel. Like, if you wanted to
Yes.
travel somewhere and like for your personal work, so is it feasible? Like in your job, you can go, or
Yes.
you need to take holidays for that?
No, so because I'm going on an official visit, and
Okay.
it is something that is going to enhance my knowledge as a professor, and
Okay.
I will also come back with enough sort of enough networking that my students could get placements and I could get more students for my university.
Okay.
And all in all, it is an academic exercise. I'm not going there to, just make tourism. So for that, my university does give me something called an OD, which is on duty leave. So
Okay.
it is not counted as a leave, it is counted as me going to another place on duty. So most universities facilitate that because academics do have to travel for conferences.
Right.
And sometimes universities will even give you travel grants, but that depends university to university. So
Right.
if I have been chosen for, say, a conference in Prague, and I don't have the money to travel to it, I can actually ask my university to facilitate my travel. And if they feel that that conference is important for me, which they mostly do, they will facilitate my travels with some terms and conditions. So that is how this thing works. I think that's how it works in almost all organizations. But it's considered as a part of the job.
Right. What is the most challenging thing in your job?
Most challenging thing is sometimes making sure that you, while teaching, you don't forget that you also have to learn.
Right.
See, thankfully, my university gives me a nice work life balance. But sometimes you are put in a situation where you're taking, say, 6 classes a day, which is very rare, but it happens. And if you're doing 5 classes a day, where it is not just working for those 4 or 5 hours, you have also put in 3 hours to take that class for an hour, right? So if I'm to take 4 classes of 4 different subjects, and I'm putting in 3 hours work per class, I don't have time to do my own research.
True.
I don't have time to do my own publications. I don't have time to go to the library, sit for 3 hours and study. So maintaining that balance of being a great professor, but also updating yourself, making sure you're publishing, making sure you're still recognized as a credible academician, that is that's something that we all struggle with, to be
Right.
truthful.
Apart from soft skill, is there any particular skill required to be a professor?
Research.
Okay.
You have to do research. If you're not good at it, if you're not doing your research well, you are never going to be a person who can actually give proper classes, because, like I said, this is not a set syllabus. Teaching at a school is extremely difficult, and you're shaping very young minds, and you're there in your formative years. But teaching in your PhD, say you have PhD students, you have to teach them the skill of research. Because if you're not doing your research well enough, if you're not collecting the right data, if you're not choosing the right data, or if you're doing selective research, you're never going to get an answer that is correct. you know so making sure that your research is on point, making sure that your analysis is on point, is very important as a professor. Soft skills that you require are basically communication. If you have a lot of knowledge but you don't understand or you can't give it to the students, there is no point to that knowledge.
True.
The student who is coming doesn't is not the person who has done his PhD or her PhD. If a student is fresh out of school, you will have to get down to their level to teach them, and then slowly build them up so that value is added to their levels also. you know you can't on the first day think that they are going to come and write a 3,000 word paper and it is going to be flawless. That does not happen. As a professor, that is also a learning curve for you, because when you're fresh out of a PhD, you think, oh, I'm going to change the world. This is it. मेरे सारे student अब बनेंगे academician. ऐसा नहीं होता है.
Right.
You have to understand that students also come with certain expectations. They have certain family expectations also. Some of them are going to do a master. Some of them are going to go get married after a BA. So everybody is coming from different backgrounds, and it is also important that you really connect with your students. They should feel comfortable enough to come to you and say that, ma'am, I'm sorry, I could not do my paper today. I cannot submit my assignment because something happened, because um I was traveling. I got so tired that I couldn't do it. That is also something that my students have told me. And sometimes you have to take it.
Right.
There are days when I want to tell them that this is a completely bogus excuse. I'm not going to take it. But then there are also days when you know that this student is genuinely just tired. You know,
Right.
so you have to have that connect with students.
True.
And yeah, I think those two things are important. Keep your research base absolutely sound, and understand that students are also human beings, and find a balance.
So, what is your way of doing research? Is there any particular way?
um, Research could be, so I'm from a social sciences background. I'm not very good with maths, so I tend to shy away from that. I tend to shy away from, say, quants, but that's an important part of research too. So what I do is, if I have to write a paper and I have a topic in mind, the first thing that you do is a literature review. Okay, you have to find what is already written on the topic. So say we are writing a paper on the very subject that we are discussing, and
Right.
say a career in public policy. So if I have to write a 5,000 word paper, the first thing I do is read about what public policy is, read about a career, read about possible options, read about what the trajectory has been of public policy as a discipline, and then also what are the say salaries, what is the remuneration a student might expect, and the kind of study that a student has to do. And then in that paper, I define areas that I am going to talk about. So, an introduction and a conclusion in that paper, or any PhD or any book that you're writing, is a given. There's going to be an introduction and there's going to be a conclusion. So, leaving that, we come to the main body of a paper. Okay, that is where you divide it. First, you describe everything. You talk about the things that you want to elaborate upon in the paper. So if I'm talking about this very subject, I would say that the part of elaboration would be that public policy as an academic discipline, how it has risen, where did it come from, why has it become important, and what are the job opportunities in this academic discipline. Then comes the analysis, and the analysis is, okay, that is all of the things that you have read. What is the precipitate of those things? जैसे हिंदी में बोलेंगे कि सत्व क्या है इन सब चीजों का, कि आपने ये सब पढ़ लिया है, अब इसका क्या मतलब है, वो एनालिसिस बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. देयर यू विल गेट क्वांटिटेटिव डेटा, मतलब डेटा एनालिसिस भी आपको थोड़ा करना पड़ेगा. कि मान लीजिए in 2000, if we take a time period, usually it is really good to take a time period for your research. So if from 2000 to 2010, say globally, X number of students studied public policy and they got into jobs like making public policy for corporate, into government jobs in their own countries, into law, into administration, into academics. Say these are your 5 fields, okay? And then you move on and you show what is the trajectory being till 2020 or till 2023 for that matter, and has it grown? Are more colleges teaching public policy now? Are more students studying public policy? Has it become a global academic subject or a academic stream where a lot of scholarship is given? So if a lot more scholarship is given, that means more people are studying it. That means there is more jobs in it. So you do that analysis, and then you basically get your basic findings, you write about them, and then the conclusion has to be really crisp. It is something your introduction and your conclusion should be things that if a person is in a hurry and they don't want to read that entire paper, they read your conclusion, they should understand what you're saying. That is how great a conclusion should be. So I always give a lot of emphasis on how a paper is being written, and that is how I would go about doing my research. Some things that we have to always be careful about is what we tend to do as human beings is have an idea, and then if your research, if your literature review is going against that idea, you start reading and you realize, oh, this is not what I thought initially. You're
Right.
going to leave that data. That is called selective research. That's called cherry picking through the data. Don't do that. That's going to give you bad reviews. That is going to give you a wrong analysis and a wrong conclusion. It's like I really want to eat chocolate, and then I have this thing in my brain that says eating chocolate is really healthy for you, and we all know it is not, right? And then I start reading and I get one article, two article, one book on how chocolate is really unhealthy for you. And then there is this one article that says, oh, but if you eat a dark chocolate every day, it's going to be very healthy. So I quote that one article and leave the three, or leave the 30 that prove me wrong. That is cherry picking through the data. Don't do that. Okay. Don't have a preconceived notion in your head and then do the research. That is going about it backwards. You have to get to the conclusion after you do your research. So you can only have a vague idea that I want to do research on diplomacy policy or COVID diplomacy of India.
Right.
That is your research base. Once you have the information, then you come to the conclusion. That is one thing that I always say, that please don't have a conclusion before you have the information,
Okay. So, would you like to elaborate something about your PhD days?
Okay. PhD is a difficult process. Okay. It's not something that, if you're not passionate about it, don't do it. Simple. It is a labor of love. And the government gives you about 9 semesters to do a PhD. And let me tell you, it takes 9 semesters to do a PhD. So in my time, we were given 4 semesters to give a synopsis. And a synopsis is your idea of how you're going to go about your research, why you have chosen the subject, what have you read on the subject, what your chapterization is going to be, and what is your hypothesis and what are your research questions. After that, your actual research starts. Okay, after that, you start reading a lot. So in your literature review during your synopsis, you're going to give a references, a bibliography of all that you have read, and you'll think that this is enough. This is 12 pages of a list of all the books and articles I've read enough. And then you realize in your PhD that none of those things you are going to use. You'll read it all over again because you're going to, because your PhD changes, your topic also changes a bit. So one thing that is very important, and your supervisors are going to help you through it, is that your topic should be such. So once your topic is fixed in a synopsis, it is fixed. It does not change. You cannot change it because it gets registered in a government performer. Okay, it's so you cannot change. So your topic must be such that it should give you enough room to breathe. It should be flexible enough that if you want to add something to it, you want to add an aspect to it, or if you want to tweak it a little bit when you're doing your PhD, your topic should be your topic should still justify that. In my personal experience, I had a great supervisor. Okay, I feel like your supervisor sort of makes or breaks you.
Right.
Touchwood, I had great supervisor, and I had a great team who was helping me through it, because I was working on a very niche topic. I was working on energy statecraft. So I also needed to know what energy is. I basically worked on oil and gas. So since I'm not from a science background, I needed somebody who could make me understand what is a heavy crude and what is a light crude. So for all of that, my supervisor helped me through it. She got me experts. She got me in touch with experts who could help me through it, and then she also got me helped me get a field research grant, which is very difficult to get because it's Latin America is a very far off place. And then I started doing my research. I was fortunate enough to go there, to go to these countries, see their facilities, see their ports, see everything that they had to offer. and they were very Caribbean is a very nice place to visit, and they're very open with their knowledge. So they let me study in their university's library. They let me meet the head of their national gas agency, ask questions that I needed to ask, and then I came back with that information. I added it to my research. I added, made my notes, and then I started writing my chapters. So every time a chapter is written, it goes to your supervisor and they go through it. And my supervisor was so thorough that every comma, every full stop she would see, and she would say, "Oh, no, no, this has to be a semicolon. You do it again." There were times, because I was writing such a, on oil and gas, it's not great poetry to read.
Right.
So she would make sure that I'm writing also in a way that is more interesting. There were times when I would get frustrated because I've rewritten my chapters thrice, and she would say, "No, it's still not good enough." But now I understand why she did it, because she
Right.
was very clear that, listen, your PhD topic is not very easy to read, so you
Right.
have to make sure that it is readable. So you have to write in such a way that is not boring.
Right.
So I understood that. I understand that now. But at the end, when your PhD is done, when it is everything is approved, and when you get those bind copies, those bound copies,
Right.
it's the best day in the world. When they say, okay, they give you a small little slip saying PhD submitted on such and such date, and that is all you have of your PhD. And then you like 5 साल लगे इस स्क्रिप्ट के लिए, but it is the best moment you're going to have in your entire life.
Right. True.
So it's just beautiful to see. So yeah, that's my PhD journey. Lots of tears, lots of pain, but worth it in the end.
Tell me something about your first job then.
Okay, so my first job was an internship. It was a research based internship in the Indian Council of World Affairs, and it's an MEA think tank. It's a foreign policy think tank where you have researchers on each area of the world. So we had about 23 senior research fellows. Somebody was working on Central Asia, somebody was working on Russia, Turkey, all of that. And you have bureaucrats who run it. So we are supposed to write books. So it's not a job; it's a fellowship that is given. For senior researchers, you're given a 2 year fellowship where you have to get in books, and you have to also write. You have to make publications on your subject, and those publications are divided into three. There is a viewpoint, which is 2000 to 2500 words. There's an issue brief, which is about 5000 to 7000 words. And then there is a full analysis that you do, which is a longer analysis, which is a 10,000 word thing. So you're supposed to take out a certain number of viewpoints, a certain number of issue briefs, and certain number of long analysis in a year also. That is in your contract. Now, when I started doing my internship, I was doing my MPhil, and you don't get an internship in ICWA without an MA. So it's quite late in your life that you start doing an internship in ICWA. And if you want to have a job, you need a PhD. That's your basic requirement. So when I was being interviewed, I was told that you at least need a PhD to get a job here. And in my head, I went, at least a PhD is the most I can get.
Yeah.
So, but it was a great learning experience. I interned there for a year, and I got about 8 publications out in the ICWA website. It's still there. I was working on Latin America and the Caribbean, and I had a great mentor from the senior researchers, who herself is an expert on US. Her name is Dr. Stuti Banerjee. I had an amazing director research. His name is Dr. Pankaj Jha. He's a professor at OP Jindal University now. And he taught me so much, not just about research, but also about how to be professional, how to take things in your stride sometimes, how to organize. Because I also happened to organize the first India Latin America International Conference that time, where we called about 16 diplomats from all over Latin America, which was a big feat in itself. And I had a great director general who is Ambassador Nalin Suri. He's retired. And I think the one takeaway from that time was that every Friday we would have a meeting where Ambassador Nalin Suri would sit in the conference room, and it would start at 3 o'clock and end at about 4:30. And there were 23 people across, and in that 1.5 hours, I would get to know so much because I would know what is happening in Iran, and I would know what is happening in Kazakhstan, and I would know what is happening in Lesotho in such great detail because these researchers are absolutely the best in the country,
Right.
and my bosses were absolutely the best in the country, and they would just we would I would get to know everything about everything in 1.5 hours.
Right.
And he would also ask, so these that what my progress was. So these meetings were as exciting and equally scary because you were asked and you were told that you're not doing enough, or this is not good enough, or I expect more from you. So I learned a lot in that year. I learned organization, I learned publication, I did learn research. I learned how to work on a deadline. So that was a wonderful experience, and I met a lot of people. So a lot of networking also happened. So
As you were talking about the mentors, so how these mentors plays an important role in your life.
they are extremely important. You should always surround yourself with people who are better than you, who
Right.
are willing to make you better, and who are willing to sit with you, correct your mistakes instead of just telling you you're not good enough. So when you start writing, everything seems big. Everything seems like, oh, I can't write. How will I write 3,000 words? You know. So thankfully, because I had a mentor, she taught me how to do research, she taught me how to use Google, she taught me how to go to a library and see what exactly to find. These libraries are big and beautiful, but then if you don't know how to work in them,
Right.
you'll never find the information that is needed. She taught me how to work on a deadline. You forget that when you're writing a 10,000 word paper, your weekly progress is also as important as it is to write the paper in the end.
Right.
So if you're not making that small little daily, weekly progress, whether it is just reading about it, you're never going to, in the end, write that paper. So all of these things, plus your social skills, your soft skills to say, that is something that was taught to me by my DR. He was so good at it. There were days when I was reprimanded also because it's your first job and people expect a lot, and you don't know how to deliver. So there were days when I was told you're not good enough, and uh, not very proud of it, but I have cried in front of my DR, and he told me, "Oh, it's okay, you learn." So it's important to have people who reaffirm your faith in yourself. So those mentors were important. They also told me about opportunities, about how to go about my PhD, about how to get a grant, who to go to, who to give your card to, how to network, how to make connections, how to maintain those connections. All of those things have to be taught by mentors. These things cannot be taught by anybody else. So
Okay.
that and ambassadors, the immense amount of knowledge, the immense amount of understanding of how things work on the ground, immense amount of insider knowledge that you can't understand, that you can't get by reading books. You have to talk to them. So just talking, being able, having the exposure and having the opportunity to talk to these great people, that enhances your personal skills a lot, your personality a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
So how you got your first job? Is there any resources or your network helped you? How you got
Uh,
your job?
Thankfully, my first job in Amity, I got. I came back after submitting my PhD. I opened my LinkedIn and I saw a mail from Amity HR, a message from Amity HR saying we have an opportunity, and uh, it was something that was sent about 3 weeks prior to when I had opened it. And
Okay.
because I was so busy submitting, I did not have any time because the last moment, crunch moment, you're just typing, all of that. So I saw that message. I thought, I'm sure 3 weeks are up. They must have filled it somehow. But I still messaged them saying, I've just seen your message. Would you still like me to come in? They said yes. I went in. About 2 days later, they called me. I went in with my CV and my PhD and all my publications, and they interviewed me. The VC interviewed me, and a week later, I had my job. But it doesn't happen all like that all the time. You do need connections. My second job was a job in domestic politics. It was being a political consultant to various political parties in different states, and my job was to be a political advisor to my client and to structure research wings in about 6 or 7 states. Not going into too much detail, the reason I got that job is because I was publishing a lot. So because my visibility was a lot, they were the ones who contacted me. So if you're going to be an academician, make sure that you're publishing a lot, not just academic papers, but also in newspapers, in magazines. Sometimes you get called on TV. That is, if I'm on a news panel, that has happened because they have read something that I have written. Nobody will know what you know if you keep it to yourself.
Right.
I could know everything about the entire world, but if I'm not making it visible to the public, that's not going to help you. It's not going to get you job offers. It's not going to get you interview offers. You called me because you saw what I do, right? And the only reason you saw that is because you saw my visibility.
LinkedIn, yes.
So making sure that you're visible and your thought process and your analysis is out there, that's something that is really important.
So, what is the biggest learning in your life?
Biggest learning in my life is continuously update your skills, be nice to people, network, and be visible. Talk about your work. Actually do that work also. ऐसे नहीं है कि बस जाके बड़ी बड़ी बातें करनी है. काम करिए पर लोगों को बताइए कि आप काम कर रहे हैं. So काम का जिक्र बहुत important है.
So, how you keep yourself updated?
Read every day, watch the news, because I'm in that zone. If there's an IT person, they'll have to keep updating their skills like that. They have to do your courses, etc. Because I'm an IR person, read, get yourself newspaper. So all of these Washington Post and New York Post and Foreign Policy, these magazines that are, or these newspapers that are expensive, they give you a free newsletter where you get 5 articles a month. Subscribe to them. Those 5 articles from 3 different places are a lot to read. So keep yourself updated. Be on Twitter. Follow people who are in the business. Follow people who are industry professionals. Follow diplomatic editors. Follow editors who are writing. Follow diplomats. Follow geopoliticians. Follow economists. Read what they are writing. You have to read, you have to watch the news, you have to talk to your people, talk to your friends who are doing the same thing. I will not know what is happening in Japan unless and until somebody sits down and explains it to me. So the only way where I can see, oh, something happened in North Korea and Japan yesterday, North Korea fired a missile, instead of going and then Googling it, thankfully I have that resource that I'll pick up the phone and ask my friend, हाँ नॉर्थ कोरिया में क्या हुआ है, and then in a nutshell she'll tell me, oh ये हो गया. I say, okay, thanks, do that. And she does the same when something happens in the Western Hemisphere. So keep up with your networks, use them to your benefit, be useful to them also. Nobody is going to keep giving if you're not giving back.
Right.
So, and be open with your knowledge. Don't be afraid of your competition. They are as much of your competition as much as they are your collaborators,
Right.
So be open with your knowledge and follow people, read the newspapers, watch the news. That's what I would say. Write a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing your experience with us. And it's time for the Q&A session. So we do have one question in the comment section. As someone who wants to be an IFS officer, I wanted to know, how does Ministry of External Affairs contribute to India's international relations and diplomacy?
So India's international relations are basically looked after by the Ministry of External Affairs. The ministry has different divisions depending on the geography. So you would have, say, a West Asia, North Africa division, which is called a MANA division. There's a LAC division, which is a Latin America and Caribbean. There's US, there's Europe, there's Africa. There's an East Africa and a West Africa. And you have chairs, you have people who are experts. They take in consultants. There's a job in Ministry of External Affairs where all of these divisions will take in consultants who are people like me. They also have their bureaucrats who are posted in these areas. They come back and become either the directors or say the joint secretaries of these divisions, and they come up with the policy of how to engage with these areas. If you want to engage with say BRICS countries, there is going to be a division that sees what your individual relations are with Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa, and then see how do you enhance those relations, where do you hold back, how much to give, how much to hold back. Okay, because BRICS is a multilateral organization. Similarly, if you have a Quad summit coming up, what are you going to do? What is your agenda going to be? If you're being a part of the I2U2, why should you be a part of it? All of that is decided by the Ministry of External Affairs. So it makes your foreign policy. Your foreign policy decision making happens in the Ministry of External Affairs. And please understand that foreign policies are not changed government to government. They are long term policies, like economic policy. You have a national interest, you have long term goals, and that is what is the Ministry of External Affairs there for. They're going to make sure that those policies are there so that these goals are achieved.
We do have one more question. According to you, what are the top books on diplomacy? I am currently reading Pax Indica by Shashi Tharoor.
Okay, sorry. According to me, what is the top books on diplomacy and
She is reading Pax Indica by Shashi Tharoor.
Pax Indica is a wonderful book. I have it in my own library also. Shashi Tharoor, being a diplomat himself, you could, leaving apart his politics,
Right.
your diplomacy and your field knowledge do shine through in that book. As far as diplomacy is concerned, you're not going to find a lot of books. The reason for that it is not like it's not a set discipline. It's not like political science कि आप जाके रियलिज्म पे ये किताब पढ़ लीजिए और लिबरलिज्म पे ये किताब पढ़ लीजिए, एरिस्टोटल ने ये बोला था. It is something that is constantly changing. So if you want to read about diplomacy, you will have to take like a section of it, and then you're going to probably find a memoir or find a book that a diplomat has written. But something that you can go through are oral history reports that you're going to find for free on any government website. Oral history reports are memoirs of diplomats, and you will see how diplomacy actually works in that. Other than that, JSTOR, Academia, Shodhganga, Sage publications, all of these are great places to find whatever articles or books you want to find. And they're academic and they're credible sources. So make sure you find what you want to look for in those places.
Okay, so anyone do have any question, they can use the raise hand option or they can post their questions in the comment section. So we do have one more question. Okay, so Priti, you want to ask this question? Yes, Priti. Okay, so she posted her question in the comment section. We are seeing many calamities nowadays, so I wanted to know whether public administrators have any role in emergency management and disaster response.
So we have a National Disaster Relief Authority. That is a completely administrative unit. Whenever such a thing happens, your bureaucrats or your civil servants are the first ones to respond. They chart out what to do, what the relief operations are going to be.
Right.
Domestically speaking, they are the ones who are the first responders. Then the teams from NDRF, etc., come in and take care of it. Before a disaster happens, you still have an entire team that is working on what possible disasters could happen, and then making sure that they don't. So even though natural calamities are happening nowadays, it is not because of lack of effort. It is because these are things that sometimes becomes unavoidable. Similarly, when it comes to disaster relief in our neighborhood, India actually has a diplomatic policy where we say that we are going to help our neighborhood anytime in HADR operations, which is Human Assistance Disaster Relief Operations, anytime there's a natural disaster. This policy started in 2004 when we were hit by that devastating tsunami in the Southeast Asian region, and 11 countries, including India and Sri Lanka and Indonesia, were affected by it. And it happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 5 o'clock in the evening, Indian disaster relief agencies were already present in these 11 countries. So it has been a policy, a diplomatic policy of ours to help during such disasters. You would see that in Turkey, you would see that in Tibet, you would see that during tsunamis, etc. So your public administrators are the ones who are organizing, who are making sure people get shelters, who are making sure electricity comes back, running water comes back, epidemics do not spread, basic medical facilities are set up. All of that only happens because our public administrators are extremely able people. They're extremely capable of doing this.
Right. I hope everyone got their answers. So if anyone do have any questions, they can post their questions. We do have some minutes. So I think that's it. We have got all the answers. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for our viewers for asking wonderful questions. And thank you, Aparaajita, for sharing your experience, your insights with us. That might be helpful for the students who wanted to become professor or wanted to get into the same field. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.